Oh, I should tell you my other experience as an undergraduate. I wrote a paper for an anthropology course that was one of my distribution requirements. And it was about sexuality in women post-menopause. And it got nominated for the Natural Science Prize. It didn't get the Natural Science Prize, but it got nominated for it. And so when I went back to the professor to pick up the paper, he called me Little Miss Menopause and told me that a lot of women enjoy sex even if they don't have an orgasm. So, like, you know, these are just some experiences.
Wow.
I think it's really different now, which is really great. So when I started the collaborative graduate program in women's health here, I actually, you know, part of it was not just to figure out what women's health could be about, and also where it was going, and train people in that, but also to provide an supportive environment for people who were interested in that, but maybe the research groups they were in were not focused on that. Because a lot of times that happens. A lot of this is done sort of under the radar. You'd be surprised how many people are studying sex differences and gender, and they don't see it applicable to women's health, or they don't identify as feminists. But a lot of the women in the collaborative program do, and so it's really great to provide that place for them.
I wanted to ask if you actually met any resistance to being a woman studying science.
Oh yeah. So I didn't get to graduate school. So this was really interesting in graduate school. I did graduate school at the University of Pennsylvania, and we had really a wonderful cohort of students. And that was so great to work with them. But I think the men who admitted us didn't really know what to do with us. So, like, the guys would be, the male professors would be standing in the hall, and maybe they'd be telling dirty jokes or something, and the women would go by and there would be total silence. And I really do think most of the women in my cohort just kind of thought they don't know whether we're their sisters or their mothers or their girlfriends. Colleagues didn't really get conveyed. You know, so actually we started a seminar group ourselves where we met at like 8 o'clock in the morning and we read papers together, and it was really supportive and great. But then the guy graduate students got wind of it, and they thought it was unfair that we had a seminar group and they didn't. So they wanted to be included, so then it became a sort of seminar for the neuroscience students, and it kind of went downhill from there.
That's too bad.
Yeah, like really, I'm sorry to say it was, but, you know, I mean, I guess I was kind of born kicking and screaming, and so, you know, we just continued to persevere, and I'm still very, very good friends, and I think we still feel pretty close. That female cohort, for the most part.
Sure. I mean, maybe you could talk a little bit more about, like what are alternative models, or what does feminism bring to like researching gender and sex differences in regards to like neurobiology or.
Yeah. Well, I think feminism brings another approach. You know, it brings another perspective. It brings, because feminism came out of theory, as well as second wave women's movement. I think it brings alternative approaches. So feminism is very rich in its interrogation of the science question and what it would be to do feminist science. And it's very rich in its alternative epistemologies. So, like, there's a wonderful area, but a great paper by Nancy Tuana called The Speculum of Ignorance and Feminist Epistemologies of Ignorance. And I just think, you know, that is such a great shaper of a different paradigm. Don't just go for the next logical gap, go for areas where we know nothing, you know, which really is what discovery is about anyway. So, I mean, it's easy enough to recognize that systematic reviews are going to cover up what isn't known because they're just about what is known, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have to come up with other methods. And in fact, I had a really interesting conversation with a colleague of mine the other day who was saying all the students in a particular graduate program ought to do systematic reviews. And I said, well, it's great to want students to do reviews, but systematic reviews may not be appropriate for all graduate students because we want graduate students to become interested in discovery and not just what's known. And so she started telling me, oh yeah, we tried to do a systematic review on X and there wasn't really anything known about it and we couldn't do a systematic review.
Mm-hmm.
And then it begins to get you to see that, well, the notion of evidence-based medicine, while it really has some powerful and important drivers to it, which is that people should be independent learners and not just dependent on what their mentors have told them. It also systematically erases what isn't known and whole areas of knowledge. So I had somebody tell me about 5 years ago they were planning a conference on hormones and women's health, and I said, don't forget, I don't remember what it was I said, but don't forget such and such. And she said, well, we're going to have a program that's based on evidence, and there's no evidence on that, so we can't include it. And that has convinced me, it's in some ways more important to know what you don't know and what isn't known
Mm-hmm.
than what is known, and I think feminism really has helped with that.